Yes, hello tradies. Season 3 is well and truly underway. We are brought to you by the great people at St Andrew's Brewery, the new brewery at Melbourne Park, the only place to be before a game at the G. It all kicks off Thursday night. My co-host is here. It's on a Tuesday morning. It feels like it's already 50 degrees in Melbourne. I'm struggling in the heat. Welcome to you, Mitchell.
Footy is back, Sam. The shows are in full swing. The games are here. It feels like footy season is right upon us, and you are wearing a Carlton hat. Usually in the socials, I know you don't see a lot of them, but on the socials, everyone wants to know what hat is Sam wearing this week. You're wearing a Carlton cap, which looks like it's out of 1995. The last year Carlton won a flag, and also potential omen, the last time a Campriali debuted for the Blues. Now we get another one.
So this is, obviously I would never usually wear Carlton paraphernalia, but my mum has just sold the family house.
Yep.
So she's moving out. And so me and my sister have been doing a lot of cleaning out of the house.
I did call you the other day and you said, I'm just a bit tied up helping mum.
Yep. And we've...
Well done for helping around the
I'm
house.
a great son. Yeah, obviously. And we've come across some gems, and this is one of them. So this was my hat given to my old man, I think in the mid-90s, and worn by my sister, who's a bit older than me. And we hadn't seen it in years, and I'm a hat fan.
Yep.
And this is pretty cool, I reckon.
I love it.
So I decided to wear it to tradies.
We'll be wearing it to the St Andrews Beach Brewery at Melbourne Park this Thursday night. Could you imagine the anticipation this Thursday? Carlton Richmond, 80,000 at the G. That place is going to be humming.
So Thursday for me is just going to be unbelievable. I'll spend the day working at the track at Albert Park, and then I'll go straight from there. I might just quickly pop in to give Diva a little walk and a feed, and then I'll go straight to the brewery with some of the boys and have a quiet pot of maybe the Apprentice, the mid-strength, and then walk across the G. It's going to be a big day.
Ooh.
And see the Tiger Cubs get pounded.
I'd love to join you, but I'll be in work mode. Maybe Friday night I might swing by.
Actually, that's right. I'll have to record because I'll have to see Mitch in action on Thursday night on the boundary.
Yes.
Tony Jones, Doc Larkin style.
Yep. We'll see how that goes.
7v Fox last week. Very interesting.
Yes.
Had a good look.
Great graphics on 7.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just going to let that go through to the keeper. And Agenda Setters last night.
Yes.
Was good.
Strong start.
Yeah, it was a strong start. Caro and...
Geez, a lot on a Monday night now, isn't
Kane
there?
the Stars. Yeah, heaps. But it's great.
The agenda's set at 7, so everyone can...
And I'm not sure if you were watching last night.
Yes.
But we got a run on Classified.
Yep. After Sunday Footy Show as well.
Yes. So our little ad for 7-Eleven has gone viral apparently, and Lloydie was just giving me a clip about my acting skills.
Kate come home the other night and she saw it. She's like, I love you.
But
acting is not your go. I said, yeah, I'm going to cop that. And I think the comments underneath suggested the same thing too.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why me being off socials is just an absolute blessing. How's your morning been? Did you take Baxter for a walk?
So we're recording at, around 8-ish now.
Yep.
7 o'clock early this morning. I'm not a coffee guy, as you know. Walking the dog, quiet streets of...
Middle Park, yeah, leafy.
Yep.
Leafy.
I saw a bloke with a big Labrador. I think he looks familiar. Zach Merritt had got his coffee this morning. He's a big Albert Park coffee guy. I see him occasionally, and he's in for a chat. I said to him, I was actually messaging our WhatsApp group for our podcast last week about your comments about list sizes and improving the VFL because, as you know, we did it on the air raid last week. And he said, I actually came across those comments last week, and I appreciate what you're getting at there in terms of what he was saying to you in an age column at Captain's Day.
About reducing list sizes potentially so that twofold, isn't it? Means that the better players get more money at AFL level, but also...
Yep. There's more money to be spent potentially at VFL level, and you're cutting out the bottom, he said 5, maybe even 2 or 3. So right now, and we're not going to go right into the micro Mitch of this, but non-AFL VFL clubs, so Williamstown, Coburg, Northern Bullants, get $260,000 to spend for an entire year. That works out to be about $15,000 a game. That's less than $1,000 a game per player per game.
Yeah, it's not enough.
Those guys can earn $1,500 potentially playing country and local footy elsewhere.
Yep.
What I was getting at last week is if you could find a way to increase the salary cap at VFL level, would get more players, instead of playing local footy, they'd play VFL footy, would improve that standard. And as Zach was suggesting, you take out 2 or 3 players from the AFL list, give that money to the VFL sides, and it means, the currently player 40 on an AFL list could go and play VFL elsewhere. It might be a better standard, and it could increase the development. So
I like it.
that was an early morning conversation in the streets of Albert Park.
It's always nice when Tradies gets cut through with the playing cohort, particularly someone as senior as Zach. He strikes me as someone that's going to be...
He's a sharp mind.
Yeah, he's going to be good in the media if he wants to go down that road.
Yeah.
He might want to go into coaching, but...
Footy manager, could be anything.
Yeah, he's got a bit of Scott Pendlebury about him, the way he thinks about the game, I reckon. Very modern views.
He's gone into business with Simon Dalrymple as well, the St Kilda recruiter, who's actually in the coming weeks running a recruiting course for potential recruiters. So Zach's got his finger in that pie as well. So for any potential recruiters out there, you can join forces with Zach Merritt in the next few weeks.
And we saw each other in Sydney after the record this time last week, both up for the season launch.
You had very shiny shoes on.
At Luna Park.
They were the talk of the red carpet.
Were they?
Yes.
Was there even a red carpet? I was
pink carpet.
It was good. It was a strong opening.
Yep.
And I want to talk more about opening round in the air raid.
Maybe we'll just do a joint air raid because I was thinking.
Okay, good. I like it. All right. I like when we don't plan our air raids and we end up talking about the same thing. Anything else before we get into the whiteboard?
Actually, I did get a message during the week.
Oh, no.
Relating to something you said on the show last week about Joe Danaher and Wangaratta had reached out.
Yes.
What you failed to mention, and what I've since learnt, that you went up to Wangaratta for a little cash job.
Oh, no.
Little hosting arrangement for Sam up on the border.
It was mainly for the love of Wangaratta and the Wangaratta Rovers, to be honest.
You don't leave the 30-kilometre circumference of Melbourne for nothing.
I was just trying. I was helping out a friend.
Okay.
I was, it was great to be there and great to be part of it. The remuneration was only a small part of it.
I heard you were put up in a nice pad that the president potentially owns or has links to, in a little nicer comm.
See, this is where sometimes I reckon you've got the story right, and you've got it, and you've grabbed it with both hands, but you've just taken it one step too far because I drove home. There was no pad.
Was there offering though?
There may have been an offer.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so it all comes out in the wash.
It's a good journey.
But I drove home. By the way, have you done that drive too many times?
A couple of times.
Like
One of my good
the
mates
Hume?
lives in Yakandanda, actually.
Yeah, okay. I didn't realise how poorly lit it is.
Right.
So on the way up, great drive.
Yep.
On the way back, at 11 o'clock, no lights, no diva in the back.
Yeah, right.
Very, very tough.
Feel a bit lonely?
I did feel a little bit lonely.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress.
So if you've spotted Sam out there, and just let me know, and we'll hold him accountable.
I tell you what's coming back out. With the weather's just starting to cool down just a little bit. We're heading into that. Well, I mean, at the moment it's
hot.
It's boiling. It's disgusting. But as we head into mid-March, the weather's just going to start turning into that nice sort of early 20s.
Yeah.
The motorbike's coming back out.
Oh,
Yeah. I might ride it here next week.
the leathers?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Mate, you got to protect yourself.
Yep.
Okay, let's get into the whiteboard. So I'm not sure I properly appreciated this time last week when you put up Jackson, how it was a big story that you broke, and it's set the agenda for...
That's what we do at 7.
oh God, I fell into that trap, didn't I? Shit. It's set the cat amongst the pigeons, really, with the upcoming trade period, because Jackson is clearly going to hold probably the key for unlocking other trades.
Yeah. Freo, in my opinion, can't do Pickett and Warner as it sits without something like Jackson happening.
No, I agree with that. But do you think that they can do Warner and not Pickett?
And keep Jackson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a world in which... Because that's probably their ideal scenario, isn't it? They wouldn't want to lose Jackson, but if they were
If
to
there was a
lose
pecking
him,
order, Warner is above Pickett, you would think.
It's really interesting because Fremantle have suddenly become the Real Madrid of modern trade in the last 12, 24 months, haven't they? I mean, that they've quietly but consistently put together, largely through good drafting,
Yep.
a really solid spine.
Yep.
And then they've gone and handpicked the players that they've wanted from other teams, and we go from, they get Shea Bolton. If they're able to add Warner and Pickett, an A grader and a potential A grader, pardon me, to that team, they're going to be a team of superstars almost, aren't they?
And they kept Sarong and Brayshaw, two Victorian kids. When Chera leaves, you thought, will they lose another one?
That's
but it's important to keep both of those guys. And Brayshaw is locked in until 2031.
And they haven't missed Chera one bit.
Nah.
Really. I mean, Chera's been a bit injured and he's played some good footy for Carlton, but he hasn't been the player that Carlton thought he was going to be when they got him. Has he?
Had 1 year at that level, but probably not as rounded as that.
Yep. So I just wanted to talk about Jackson for a little bit more. Can I?
Just before we get off the Dockers, this
quickly.
pricked my interest from the weekend. This is ABC Radio in Perth.
Jeez, you missed nothing.
Peter Bell, ex-Fremantle football boss, is now back in the media where he was a couple of years back, interviewing Simon Garlick, the CEO of the Fremantle Dockers, asking him about Brad Green's comments, Brad Green being the president of the Melbourne Footy Club, who put 3 first-round picks on the head of Kozzie Pickett.
The Melbourne president said they just only want 3 first-rounders for Kozzie. You'd be okay with that, wouldn't you?
Love when presidents start negotiating in public. It's it's a fascinating watch and entertaining. There's no doubt about that. But won't buy into that one quarters. I found it. It was an interesting comment publicly, just to say the least. That we're desperate to keep a player, but if he does want to go, this is what we'll take for it. But we'll might see whether that's got any legs later in the year.
I reckon the thought would have crossed your mind. There's first-round draft picks and then there's first-round draft picks, right? 16, 17, 18 next year with all the academy father-sons and everything else might actually be mid to late 20s, so it might not actually be the biggest deal that Brad contemplated at the time.
That's your words, Belly. I won't pass comment on that, but. As always, you do make a lot of sense.
Now it's March, but I love that from a club. Just giving a little backhander to the Demons saying, if you want to negotiate through the media, we've taken note. And maybe they're thinking the door is ajar even further now for Kozzie, given the Demons are already starting to talk trade value.
Now that you've heard the response from Simon Garlick, was it the right thing to do for Brad Green to talk about potential value for one of his players before a game's been played?
I think it felt like a bit of a throwaway line, 3 first-rounders. I think you could say that about most players in the comp. So I don't think it was the worst thing for Brad, but I think the Dockers are going to absolutely leverage that off the back of it. So in terms of keeping Kozzie, maybe not the best thing.
I think it's opened the door too much. I think when you've got a player like Pickett, you clearly want to keep. You don't want to... I mean, I'm arguing against myself here because we love it for what we get to talk about in this pod. But if you're Melbourne, you just want to keep that door close shut as tightly as possible, don't you?
I'll put it to you this way. Would Melbourne be better with Jackson next year or Kozzie in their team? Given Gawn is turning 34 in December.
It's a great question because they lack scoring power and Pickett provides that. But replacing Gawn is probably going to be one of the hardest list challenges that any team has faced in the last 25 years. So my gut feel is that they probably need Jackson more than they need Pickett, but it's close.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah, I think Pickett's a star, but
Pickies. Pickies. Okay, we got T-Pap and we got Pickies.
And Vanders, Leif Vandermeer.
And Vanders.
We should have a little section of the whiteboard.
Yeah.
Sam's nicknames or nicknames of the show.
Accidental nicknames.
Pickett's a star. He's a match winner. I think it's harder to find Jacksons than it is Pickett's.
It's harder to find Jacksons than it is Pickett's. I would agree. Yep. I'm going to add to the whiteboard. You okay with that?
Yep.
Right. And I'm disappointed that my 3-letter players are done.
So we've got Chad Warner, Luke Jackson, Matt Rowell on mine. And on Sam's, we've got Jamara Eaglehagen, Luke Davies-Uniacke, and Tom De Koning. And he's now added the West Coast co-captain, Oscar Allen. Free agent this year, 26-year-old, power forward. Does he stay at the Eagles?
Is Oscar Allen a great player?
Not yet.
No. Has he been a great player?
No. Was he in your A-grade conversation?
No.
Do you want to think about that?
I thought about it. He fascinates me, this guy. So, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this, but I was talking to Matthew Lloyd about him the last couple of weeks, and Lloydie is as accurate a critic about players that I've ever worked with. He's always very fair and reasonable, but it's pretty hard to get glowing endorsements out of Lloydie. Like, there's not, and remember, he's a coach now, so he sees a lot of underage talent come through. And it's very rare that I'd say, "Oh, what about this guy?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, jeez."
Yeah.
Like, I've only heard him say that about, he said it about Davies Uniacke when he was coaching him at Haileybury. He said it last year to me about Nick Watson when he was playing for Caulfield.
Yep.
He said something like, "This guy's tiny, but he's an absolute freak." And that's aged pretty well. And
Max and Ben King.
yeah, no, he loved the Kings. And I was talking the last couple of days about Oscar Allen, and he said sometimes you just know, you see these blokes and you just know how good they can be. So I'll take that on an advisement, and he knows 1,000 times more about talent than I do. But on this show, we talk a lot about the numbers and we talk a lot about value. And right now, Oscar Allen has had a largely underwhelming career. So he's played 93 games and he's kicked 139 goals. So he's a goal and a half a game. Now, I understand he's had injuries. I totally get that. And he had an excellent 2023 where he kicked 53 goals. On top of that, he's been playing for a poor side. Mm-hmm. So, understand all of that. But Nick Larkey's been playing at a poor side as well.
I reckon he might have been emergency for that 2018 grand final.
Yeah, he wouldn't have played. He only played 2 games in 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's at a point now where key forwards are hard to come by. He's a free agent. So he's obviously going to be extremely attractive. So if you're the Brisbane Lions, or if you're Hawthorn, as reported in the West Australian over the weekend, or even if you're Melbourne, and you need someone desperately to fill this position, of course you're going to spend 1.5, maybe even upwards of that on a long-term deal for this guy. However, if you are the West Coast Eagles, they're in such a precarious position. And I know people think I've been harsh on the West Coast Eagles. And yes, I think their list is a disaster. But I feel for them with this situation because he's their captain. They've just got a new coach. Mm-hmm. They want to keep the likes of Harley Reid. You don't want to be losing your captain.
Yeah.
Having said that, I wouldn't want to be giving a long-term deal to a guy whose body I don't trust.
That's the issue. The knee is the issue.
And who I may get compensated with a top 3 pick.
Yeah.
Just before Tasmania comes in. This is a really, really tough one, and I feel for everyone at the West Coast Eagles. So that's the club side of it. And I want to get your take on this. And then just quickly, I can't believe I said that.
Thanks to 7-Eleven.
The Oscar Allen side is, I'm a big one for how short AFL careers are. Mm-hmm. And I do believe, and I've said this about Luke Davies-Uniacke, that you've got to make hay while the sun shines. You only get one chance at it. You've got to look after you. And I say that for Oscar. If he wants to go play for Brisbane, who are a very good chance of winning another flag, instead of languishing near the bottom of the ladder, I wouldn't begrudge him. Having said that, he's the captain. Mm. When you sign up as the captain, you prioritise different things ahead of yourself. So now that you may have heard different information. My understanding is that West Coast are offering him 5 and he wants 7+.
That is similar to what I've heard. I heard he's been offered 4 to 5.
Yep.
And he wants 6 or 7 because he's a 26-year-old free agent. Unlike Bont. Bont is a rare category of 26-year-old who signs for 4 years. Every other big dog free agent signs for 6 or 7 because when you get to 30, 31, usually your value is starting to diminish compared to what you are at 26. So you are at your highest value right now as a free agent as a 26-year-old. So lock yourself in for 6 or 7 years at the highest point.
So that's my question to you, and then I'll let you have, your perspective on the whole situation. The biggest question for me with Oscar Allen is he willing to sacrifice years and money for the betterment of his footy club and take a smaller deal? Or should he think purely about himself and his family and do what's right for him? And that would be to leave for not just longevity of deal, but for the potential of success as well.
This is not a cop-out. I'm not trying to not cop-out in this question, but it just depends on what means most to him. He's a WA boy as well, which we haven't thrown in as well.
Sorry, and you're right. And that's the other part that I should have thrown in, is that he's a local. And so that would be an added salt in the wounds for West Coast supporters if you were to lose a local, which are hard to find.
If you were to tell me 3 or 4 years ago that a local WA boy, 26-year-old captain of the footy club, would even consider leaving, we'd be like, wow.
Yeah, it's going to be the biggest story in footy ever. Yeah.
So, and that sort of talks to where things are at, right? The other factor here is restricted free agent like Oscar Allen is usually scare clubs off because, and I keep using the Jeremy Cameron example, but
Force a trade.
But because West Coast we think are going to be bottom 4, is it in the, like, let's say Oscar does entertain a trade, is it in West Coast's best interest to accept a top 5 pick? You know, the only reason the Giants matched the Geelong offer for Jeremy Cameron is 1, they could do it with cap room, and 2, they weren't happy because the Giants were contending for finals. They weren't going to accept pick 13 or 14 for Jeremy Cameron on its own. They thought, well, he's worth more. We can match it. We can force a trade, end up getting 2 or 3 first rounders. But with the West Coast one, they're going to have as much cap room as anyone. So they'll be able to match it. But if they finish bottom 4, they're looking at a top 5 pick. Now, right now on the open trade market, Oscar Allen isn't worth a top 5 pick.
Okay, so that was going to be my question to you. What's he worth?
Pick 8 to 10. The knee here, and clubs will have to do their work and due diligence on it, but the knee is a concern long term. What's it going to look like in 4 or 5 years? Is a club willing to offer him 6 or 7? Because how do you know what the knee's going to look like in 6 years?
Yeah, well, I think you're more willing to take that risk if you're another club. So I'll give you an example. When Joe Danaher left Essendon, I'm just trying to think. It was his groins, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, bad groins. Yeah. Remember all the Essendon people quietly briefing everyone, being like, mate, his body's cooked anyway. You know, like we were kind of happy to ship him, and Brisbane fixed him.
And he signed 3 years at the time. Now, the rules have changed since where tenure comes into the...
yeah, well, you were all over that story at the time.
The Danaher. But they played the rules to a T at the time. Yeah, this one is going to be fun to watch this year.
So...
Yeah, I think if West Coast come with a 5 or 6 guarantee, he'll stay.
Another one just before we leave Oscar Allen. What would he be if he left? What would be the money remuneration per year that he would be looking at?
At another club?
Yeah. If he left, so outside of West Coast, what, like, let's say it's Hawthorn or Brisbane, the offers are going to be somewhere around
1.2.
Yeah, that would be a minimum, right?
Yeah, but and back to my original point, West Coast can offer that with their cap. But it's just tenure. They're worried about the knee.
And what would Mitch Lewis's next contract be worth?
Depends what he shows in the second half of this year when he gets back from that ACL.
800?
That actually was the figure in my mind.
I would take Mitch Lewis at that money over Oscar Allen at his money. Mitch Lewis, 70 games and 125 goals.
Yeah.
An average of 1.8. He's got a better average. He's nearly kicked the same amount of goals from less games.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my whiteboard.
I'm not adding one this week. We've got a long season ahead. And
We do. That's smart footy from you.
I actually had Oscar Allen ready to go, but you jumped me.
I stole him.
Yep.
Okay, Warner, Jackson, Rowell, LDU, JUH, TDK, Oscar Allen. And that was our whiteboard, of course, brought to you by the great people at HBF Health Insurance, your health dream team. Make the trade to HBF today.
Now, Nuts and Bolts is back this week. Before we get to that, wanted to talk about Christian Petrarca, the story broken by Mark McGowan in the Age newspaper
Good story.
last night. He has split with his long-term management group of Paul Connors and Robbie Durazio at Connors Sports Management, and he's gone full-time to marketing guru Anna Scully.
Yep, wife of Eddie Betts.
Yep. She's been working with Christian for the best part of 6 months already in terms of the partnerships marketing space. He's obviously really deep into that, but he's decided now, with 4 years left on his deal at Melbourne, he doesn't need Connors Sports. What did you make of this?
4 or 5 years left?
4. He signed until 29.
Okay.
5 seasons left. He's got 5 seasons left.
5 seasons, sorry.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
It's not often that superstar players leave big-time managers, particularly with that long left in his deal. There's clearly been some sort of falling out in the relationship. I don't presume to know exactly what that is.
Do you think it was related to the end of last year?
I don't know. And if it was, no one's ever going to admit that, right?
Yeah.
But he clearly wanted to leave the club and it didn't happen. I wouldn't have thought that that's the fault of his management, but I don't know the intimate details. He's still going to have to pay out whatever he owes his management. It's usually somewhere around 4 to 5%. So what, 5% of, it's, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of the next 5 seasons. And he probably thinks that he doesn't need a footy manager. Like he might only have one more deal to sign. Now, it would be interesting if, and obviously I hope this doesn't happen, but if bad things happen in Melbourne's season, if they miss the 8, if the coach goes, if Collingwood come hunting him again, maybe he'll need to be traded. So Anna's not a accredited agent yet.
Not at this point.
But she did the extension for Tyson Stengel.
As a guardian.
Yeah. And from all reports, she was very good to deal with then, and Tyson got a good deal. So I'm sure Anna's very good at what she does. It's an interesting. It was a fascinating story for Mark.
Fascinating because it was able to coexist in August, September since he's been working with Anna. So this partnerships arrangement has been going on for some time, and now he's felt like he needs to split from Connors. It maybe it suggests that he is happy to stay at Melbourne, as you say, because he doesn't need a football contract renegotiator or a trade negotiator. Now, he can always go and find someone to do that in August, September this year if he feels that way. This is what he said when I asked him about his future at Melbourne a couple of weeks ago. Do you feel like your future is at the Melbourne Footy Club with 4 years left on your deal?
Yes, definitely. Yes. As I said, I love the footy club. I love the connections that I've built at the footy club. My friendships, I've got long-lasting friendships since, I was 17, 18 years old.
He's saying that now. I just wanted to put that on the record.
Was that with Red Bull?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that change his answer or?
You talked about this on the air raid last week. It's just lots of sponsors creeping in.
Nuts and bolts?
Nuts and bolts. It's back.
So on the weekend, behind Will Day, Carl Amon was voted by the coaches as the second best on ground in that game for the Hawks.
Amazing goal he kicked.
He's having a super couple of years at the Hawks. I want to take you back to the end of 2022 when Amon leaves Port Adelaide as a free agent to join Hawthorn on a 4-year deal, but it actually goes back a couple of years earlier. So 2020, the Hawks finished 13th. 21, they finished 14th. The succession plan is agreed. Then it blows up. Clarkson, Mitchell, O'Meara, Tom Mitchell try to get out, or the club pushes them out. It doesn't happen. Then 12 months later, they do leave. Hawthorn is in a state of flux because it's like we're going from one of the oldest lists in the competition to one of the youngest. We're losing these senior players. Who is actually going to come through the door? Carl Amon decides to be that guy. Quite astonishing, really. And he was the first pillar out of all of this that set off almost the next wave of the last 2 years and what they've been able to do. So at the end of 2022, they finished 13th. They lose Tom Mitchell, Jager O'Meara. Everyone is looking at Carl Amon in Victoria. Melbourne is really keen because a couple of years prior, they'd tried to get Isaac Smith. He'd said no. The Demons are looking for a wingman to complement Ed Langdon on the other side. Carl Amon meets with the Demons at Simon Goodwin's house. Impressed by their offer. The Saints are also keen, but he doesn't feel he needs to meet with them because his mum, Katrina, had joined as the club's Indigenous development manager in the February of the year he decides to leave Port Adelaide. So he didn't feel like he needed to do as much work on the Saints, but they were also in the mix. The other complicating factor when it came to the Saints for Carl Amon was that Jordan Ngoe, they were heavily into him. So he sort of sat second in their pecking order. And then you had the Hawks, who had Sam Mitchell after one full season at the helm. He met with Mark McKenzie and Sam Mitchell at Sam's house, and their pitch of a bit more of a relaxed lifestyle got Carl over the line on a 4-year deal. The biggest thing, as I said, from the Hawks was the fact that it wasn't all footy focused. He was looking to get back to Victoria. He was a Victorian boy. The Demons were keen. The Saints were keen, but he decides on the Hawks. Ends up as a 4-year deal as an unrestricted free agent, which meant the Power couldn't match. Second round compensation pick. Pushes back to 30 in the draft after changing hands a couple of times, ends up in Carlton with Lockie Cowan, the Tasmanian, who is set for a big year this year with Nick Newman out of that side. So I just wanted to point out, as Hawthorn were getting younger, everyone was leaving or they were trying to ship off these senior players. Carl Amon was the first one that sort of set off the wave, and he's had, now into his 3rd year at the Hawks, had 2 really good seasons.
How old is he now?
Well, he was 27 at the time, so he'll be turning 30 this year.
It's been a great pickup.
Yeah.
And great value by the sounds of that nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
Bad loss from Port?
I felt at the time they had enough to cover him. They had
so
enough
did
of
I,
those
but
wing
now-
halfback types.
The move has aged well for the Hawks and hasn't aged particularly well. He'd look good for Port Adelaide right now, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Let's have a look here at the Hawthorn Best and Fairest from 2024. I dare say he would have finished in the top 10. He had a pretty good year last year. Carl Amon 7th. So,
It's still pretty good, top
yeah.
10. All right, nuts and bolts back. We love it.
And before we wrap up, sort of 2 questions from the opening round of footy. Is Jake Stringer a walk-up to this Giant side from what you saw on the weekend?
Yes.
Whose spot does he take?
Someone's.
Okay. No, I thought Callum Brown was back to what I was saying in August, September last year. I think he wasn't the overall need for the Giants, but let's see what he can do when he's back from
You'd
that
find
hammy.
a spot for Jake Stringer.
And Collingwood, would they be closer to the flag this year with Tom Barras or Dan Houston in their team? Now, we haven't seen Houston yet, I must say.
Probably Barras.
Barras cost a little bit more than Houston, but it wasn't much at the end of last year
Yeah.
in terms of trade value.
I'm worried about the Pies, but I also want to see them with Houston, DeGoey, and Cox back in the team.
Cox.
Why is Cox surprising? I've said this
been a
before.
lightning rod for some
No
time.
Cox, no Collingwood. They are a different team when he plays. We'll leave it there. Thanks again to our friends at Sanders Beach Brewery and their new location at Melbourne Park. I'm going to be there Thursday pre-game. If you see me, please come and say hello. Lots of tradies there. Looking forward to spending some time at the brewery this season. Please remember to follow tradies on iHeart, Spotify, or subscribe on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget, just quickly, send in your voice memos for Just Quickly. It's via our show notes it's literally one link. All it takes in the show notes for where you get the pod, or it's on our Instagram at Tradies Podcast.
Just Quickly and Air Raid be coming at you soon. We'll see you next week, tradies.